So what are you having then, Jonathan?
Pint, please, mate.
2 pints, please, landlord.
So, Ian, where's our audience sitting then?
They're over there, sat on that table over there.
Oh, yeah, I can see them. Okay, well, before we go over there, what are we going to tell them?
Well, we're just going to tell them it's a relaxing environment where we can discuss, all stuff around business transformation.
Okay, cool. So who's actually over there? Who have we got?
There's some executives, some professionals, a few consultants.
Cool, fantastic. Well, let's crack on. Let's get over there.
Welcome to the Beer and Butterfly,
a podcast where we talk transformation.
I'm Ian Kingston.
And I'm Jonathan Parnaby.
And we're your hosts.
In today's episode, we reconnect with some old friends from season 2.
My filing cabinet was half open.
That's a brilliant start, JP.
I know how to write them, don't I?
If in doubt, start with the filing cabinet.
It's like an old noir detective episode, isn't it? as the one drawer shuts on the filing cabinet. So the Beer and Butterfly is full tonight, and we're actually joined by some old friends from our previous season. Is that right, Ian?
Yeah, no, it's good, isn't it? It's busy in here.
Yeah, I can't move shoulder to shoulder, which probably breaks all COVID regs, but there we go. But no, I'm going to just introduce everybody, go around the table, as it were. So I'm going to start with Sarah. Sarah, welcome back.
Thank you very much. That seems very apt, actually, because I think I was your first guest, was I not, on season 2?
Yeah, it's like I planned that in my head and said, I'm going to go to Sarah first because she's the first guest. But no, that's totally not. You're just in the top right of my screen.
Okay.
So, yeah, tell everybody who hasn't had chance to catch your episode from last season who you are and where'd you come from?
I'm number 1 and I'm from Bristol. So, I'm Sarah Walters and I'm one of the directors at Astor Commercial Services. We've been going for about 4 years, but I've been in procurement we do procurement consultancy for clients. We work for small, medium, quite large clients. So we have quite a range of different clients. But I've been in procurement forever, really. So, but latterly working mainly in the IT and the digital space. So we get quite involved in helping our clients deliver IT transformation programs and small change as well. So, quite a wide range.
Absolutely, that's how we met. So, because we worked together on some transformational programs, and you were invaluable. So, thanks for coming here tonight. Next on the blind date, we've got Tim.
Hello, I'm Tim Dew. I'm the founder and I suppose inventor of a thing called Rocket. We're a serious games business. We build business simulations to drive transformation in organizations and accelerate learning. So, it's a bit of fun. And I've got quite a bit of big news for you, actually, since I was on the show 6 months ago. So, lots of very exciting things happening. So really good to be back at the pub with you boys.
So you're teasing it now. He's teasing.
Yeah, he's leaving us.
Absolutely. Breadcrumbs, people. But no, thanks, Tim. It's great to have you back. And certainly not last, and certainly not least, Simon. Welcome, mate. Welcome back.
Hello. Thank you very much. My name's Simon Woodhouse. I'm a business change specialist, I'd call myself. Been a contractor for a number of years in doing business change, probably business change in various guises for 15 years. All sorts of industries, all sorts of different experience, working with different types of projects, different people. So, glad to be here.
Great stuff. There we go. So we're all here and none of us are shy. I know that. So and hopefully we're going to get into some real good conversations. So, Ian, do you want to introduce the kind of topic and theme?
I'm going to take Tim's take on that.
Yeah, it's what's happening in transformation now.
Absolutely. So, we wanted to kind of give a loose theme in terms of opportunities and challenges that's happening in transformation right now. So it kind of goes with our season 3 theme of fresh insights. So we just want to kind of draw from various people's experiences. And we thought, why not? Let's invite the some of the guests from our previous season on and have a bit of a chat and see how it works. So yeah, I'm going to pick Simon first, actually. And the reason why I'm picking Simon first, because he was first to put his question in and he's first to put his topic in because he did his homework. I didn't leave it to the last minute, which I won't name names. So Simon, do you want to kind of introduce your topic of discussion, and we'll go from there?
Sure. Okay. Yeah, basically, I've been having a few thoughts about the pace of change in organisations, and the fact that the environment is changing so quickly. Organisations are having to change to adapt to it. The way that they provide things to customers, the way customers want to receive things, and probably the way that employees are acting in the workplace as well. So the pace and frequency of change, I feel, moving around into different organisations, it's constantly getting ramped up. And obviously our environment's changed, with COVID last sort of 18 months and what have you. And there seems to be more change happening, and it seems to be overlapping in certain parts of the organisation as well. And that's causing people, I think, to sort of question about the change. Certainly I'm aware of, for example, finance systems going in 2 years after previous finance systems have gone in, and people are scratching their heads. And so people are in a constant state of flux in the organisation, and there doesn't really seem to be a BAU. Agile change management has come to the fore recently as well to kind of respond to agile projects and the way that change is delivered. And so I'm thinking that there's probably a change-ready state that organisations are in, or should be in, or should be considering to be in, and no real BAU state. And my sort of question or observation is, how do we achieve a change-ready organisation? How do we get employees engaged and with the change agenda, understanding it, and sort of ready to take it on? So it's quite a sort of big question, really, with a lot of elements to it there. But sort of pass it over to you guys. I've got some thoughts, but I just wanted to hear what people thought.
Yeah, how many pints have we got? Get through it. I'm going to go to you, Ian, actually, first.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the observation, if you want, and the think change is constant in my view. But then I think change should be constant in my view as well. I think for organisations to survive and to keep, if you want, to keep relevant, they need to be constantly changing. And I think the other point you were saying there is that, but it's happening all over the organisation in several ways, whereas maybe before it was one part of the organisation or another, and it's happening in quicker cycles. How do we make an organisation change ready, so to speak? Is I think you have to put the right capabilities into the organisation to be constantly changing the organisation. So explore and exploit today's type of value, explore new value, and go after that, and have the right capabilities in the organisation to do that. And then I think the people side is a real mindset thing. It's getting people aware that that's always going to be happening and getting kind of used to that kind of environment. So I think there's a lot of work to do to get there. But just starting the conversation off, I guess, is I think that's got to become the norm.
Yeah, Tim, you got some thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think that change ready state is a very interesting subject because and people don't tend to link it very heavily with the maturity of the organization. I think that if you imagine particularly in IT with sort of Gartner maturity standards or steps, if you like, chaos, reactive, active, optimize, and so on. When I'm talking about that with clients, I tend to switch that last word, optimized, over to agile. So it's really interesting that using that word agile for change, But actually, the organization just has to, people need to increasingly think of their whole organization as being agile. And what I mean by that is being able to respond very quickly to environmental conditions, and going back to your point, Ian, being very reactive to that, being able to be reactive, because we are in a state of permanent change. And I think the last 2 years has absolutely exemplified that.
Sarah?
So I suppose I would think about this in a slightly different way, given what I do. So we spend a lot of time helping clients bring on board new vendors, new suppliers. So when you talk about the organisation, a change-ready organisation, Simon, you were talking very much about the internal employees, whereas I was thinking about the whole kind of ecosystem, if you like, in terms of how a company delivers its change, and the suppliers that they pick are very, very important for that. And I think one of the things that we've definitely seen in our organisation as we've been helping clients select suppliers is there's definitely a move towards kind of shorter timeframes, potentially in terms of contract length. Not always, because sometimes if you get the right partner, you're prepared to go for that longer relationship. But I think if it's a new requirement, they're definitely saying, right, well, let's take a shorter time frame. And the sort of questions that people are asking in their RFPs, they're a lot more focused on flexibility, agility, how do suppliers share with them what their development roadmap looks like? So in some ways, I think in some cases, quite rightly, probably, companies are actually outsourcing that problem, if you like, to the supply base and saying, you guys are the experts. You're already, if you think about certain software solutions, they're already developing their solutions for a multitude of clients. So surely you're going to get a faster response in terms of change if you've got somebody who's an expert in that field. So yeah, I definitely think we've seen this a lot in terms of the way that companies are engaging with the suppliers that they're selecting, and the sort of things that they're demanding of them in terms of that flexibility and that agility.
Really interesting. Simon, so there's quite different kind of points there. Is there anything you want to pick up on or cover some of your kind of thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, I just want to bring it down to a human level, and I think about the people who are adopting the change, and really think about the organisation generally. And I think they've got a duty of care to be able to explain the change more coherently to people, so they can get on board with the long-term vision. It seems to me in organisations that the portfolio of change isn't really well managed. So there's a lot of overlapping, a lot of misuse of resources, and people stretched very thinly. So, and this is a constant thing everywhere I go. So if we're saying there's a lot of change happening and it's overlapping, but we're already not very good at handling portfolios, it must be extremely confusing to people in the organisation who are looking to adopt the change or being asked to do that. They can't get on board with it. They're confused. They're uncertain. It leads to, a bit of their future is uncertain. That leads to fear. It's not engaging is essentially where I'm coming from. So I believe that to get a change-ready organisation, we've got to look at engagement and proactively engage with employees around the change agenda, so they understand it better and are geared up, ready for what's coming down the line. And that's a real shift in organisational culture and behaviours as well, because there's a lot of decisions that are made away from operational level that are confusing to people at operational level. And so if we can create a safe environment where people can contribute, we know fine well with motivators in the workplace that if people feel valued and their contributions valued, they become more engaged. So I think organisations can learn from engagement tactics, and businesses like perhaps say Virgin or Google who come very high on the employee engagement scores regularly. What are the sort of things, and how do they engender an engaged workforce, and see if they can look to tap into those things. And then I think line managers who've got relationships with people, they should be able to sort of perhaps, in certain organisations, health and safety is top of the tree. How did that become the number one priority in organisations? Quite obviously, the reason for it is there, but how did they get it there? Through culture and behaviours, and how can they do that with change? So a whole bunch of things there that I think are in the pot.
You made me think of a couple of things there, Simon. I mean, you talked about Google and Amazon and that, and they're very, not only do they have a lot of money to invest in people and time to do this, but they're very absolutely clear on their objectives, if you want, their goals, their vision of what they're trying to do. And they're also really, really quite clear, I believe, from what I understand, in being quite open. They're quite an open set of organized, fail fast. Go and try and do this. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But that doesn't mean, you do everything, you spend millions of pounds to get there. You try something a little bit. And if it doesn't work, you might move on and try something else. Do you see what I mean? And it's that openness and that leadership and that capability within the organization that allows those types of organizations to change. And the kind of people that I think work in those types of environments are those types of people who have taken on that kind of culture and enjoy that kind of culture of working and moving through. But there's quite a lot of people in, say, more of the traditional organizations who may not be of that ilk. And it's how do we help them with that culture change of being change ready, being able to move fast, do things, not worry about failing, the right type of leadership, and jump into things and move along. So otherwise you could find yourself in a situation, and it's going to sound quite harsh, but where all we're doing is trying to find reasons why not to change rather than looking at how can we change. Mm-hmm. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I think that piece on leadership is often overlooked with any transformation. Getting the cultural balance right, absolutely. People talk about culture, value, purpose, all these great expressions, but my experience is there's just very few great leaders around.
What makes a great leader, Tim, in terms of a change sort of setting?
So I think what makes a great leader is another question like that I like to pose myself, which is empathy a function of intelligence?
Yeah.
Are you born with it? Can you teach people empathy? Can you teach leadership? I don't know. I think it is more nature than nurture in my experience, but I'm very happy to be proven wrong.
Yeah, I think there's techniques you can use when you engage with people that are more empathetic, and the way you ask questions, the way you talk to people.
But you've got to have the intrinsic motivation to think like that. It's like going on a communications course. Communications course is great, but if you don't know what conversations you might be having, then a communications course is absolutely useless. I think it's an ecumenical question, Simon.
It is.
More pints, please.
I'll have a chaser with that. I don't think we can get away from the fact that change is all about the people who are being invited to change, not about the organisation and its direction of travel, because the imperative to change is there, of course, but unless you bring people along or you replace them, you're not going to get change willingly or sustainable change, I don't think.
So I'll be quite challenging on that point because I see that transformation quite differently, and that's why I built my business. But the psychology behind it is, and a very interesting use of your language there, which is inviting people to change, which is asking them to change, was a very nice way of putting the fact that they have to change, in different words, which is lovely. But the psychology behind it is the only way that somebody's going to believe in an idea is get them to believe it as their own idea and their own idea in the first place. So inviting someone to change is just a different way, a nice soft way of saying that, telling them they're going to have to change, which is, but they will go or else. But in actual fact, if you can get them into an environment where they realise that the organisation or their environment has to change and they have to be a leading light in it, then that's the trick.
Sure, but it's probably a process. I mean, if for example you say, look, we're changing, it's a fait accompli, it's happening, what do you feel about it? And then get somebody to explain, if they feel it's safe, what they actually feel about it. I think that is the first stage to starting to get them to a stage where they're ready to trust and take on the change. It's how they feel about it, what it means to them, because it's a personal decision to change, isn't it?
But I think that goes to the previous point, though, Simon, doesn't it? It goes to the previous point, which is about that culture. When you're having that conversation with someone, then immediately you're starting to think about the whole thing of transition and the whole transformation or change as a transaction. You know, how do you feel about this transacted change that we're talking about? But if you've set that paradigm, you've got that leadership in place where that culture is set for permanent transformation, you know, what Ian said earlier, then you don't have to look at it anymore as a transactional piece.
Well, I suppose you need to let people know where they've got to, what the change needs to be. So you need to be able to articulate what you need people to do. You need to articulate what the change is so people can move to it, even if they're used to constant change and they've got that environment where they're quite happy with constant change, if you want, and wants to change and are happy to do that, if that makes any sense. But you've got to be able to articulate it. Otherwise, everybody might just change in a different way. So you've still got to have that kind of vision and that. And I would have thought that, well, maybe it's leadership, but that direction of what needs to happen to change. So I don't think I wouldn't use the word invite them to change, but I think they've got to know where you need them to go. Do you know what I mean? What's got to be done?
You've got to describe the outcome well.
Yeah.
It's you know, some of the stuff that we've talked about with Concord, Ian. But absolutely. But you know, it goes back to that dreadful dearth of leadership that we've got. You know, and also, it's a lot more deep than that. It's the post-industrialized. I'm not unhappy with it because this is where we're at. But this post-industrialized quasi-militaristic hierarchy that we've all inherited from our schooling. And pervades society about, you know, how leadership should be, rather than a disseminated leadership model. We still adhere to this hierarchical model. And I think actually, to be fair, the millennials and Generation X's are starting to think differently a bit, just observationally. But you need to have a non-hierarchical leader to let that cat out of the bag.
So I think in some ways it's about, I mean, I'm not an organisational expert, clearly. I mean, my thought processes around the conversation that's been had is around, you know, how organisations use their third parties to kind of support all of what you've just been saying. And it feels to me like what my experience is generally you have people who are doing the BAU, who are getting on with the day job. And then they generally have a kind of a change team who are thinking about the future and the development and the kind of, and what that looks like. And that's where we get involved mainly with organisations, is with those teams who it's their job to effectively facilitate that change. Now, I know at some point you absolutely have to then engage back with the BAU teams, because at some point the BAU piece is going to change. But I do think having this kind of specialist team of people, if you like, who are involved in designing the change, developing the change and thinking about the change, actually outside of the day job, it gives people the headspace to think, you know, differently about things and actually consider all the different options without the people who are kind of going, well, we've always done it this way, or, you know, hang on, this is going to have this impact or that impact. And of course, at some point, you've got to engage with those people and go, OK, can this work in reality? But I think if you're trying to think about the different ways of doing things and being creative, sometimes, you know, you can take the BAU people out of their day job to go and do that. But I think where I've seen things fail in the past is where you've got people who are desperately trying to do the day job whilst they're also being asked to be part of a change program alongside, and then they can't do either properly or well, and then they get stressed, you know, because they're busy trying to facilitate the change whilst also doing the day job. But these are the people who often have the knowledge and the experience. So my experience is where you get people seconded onto the project and then they get backfilled on the BAU side. That really works, particularly when you're working with bringing on new suppliers and things, because then you've got a team of people who are very focused on that aspect of it all. And so I think that you know, that's what I've seen work well. And one thing I was going to talk about was I worked at Dyson donkeys years ago, when they were still manufacturing in the UK. But I worked on the washing machine project. I was the sort of lead buyer on that. And what was brilliant was basically we were a team of people who were outside of the norm. So we all sat together, and as they were designing the product, we were talking to the suppliers about, what they could manufacture, what materials they could use and all that type of thing. So it worked really well because these people didn't have a day job in the organization. All their job was to design cost out effectively. So we were all working really hard to make sure that we did the right thing from day one instead of trying to take a BAU process and make it different. So yeah, they were just some thoughts I had on the conversation.
That's agile or the small A.
Yeah. I mean, I think it makes. I've seen this in a lot of projects where if you do take people out of their day job to allow them to get on with things, it does help. So it helps. But I think if changes happening quicker and at more pace, I wonder how we resolve that. Because you don't want one part of the organisation that's changing the organisation putting it on the part that's running the organisation, because the part that's running the organisation is constantly going to be changing if you've got so much change going on, even if the change has been organised by people not part of that running the organisation. And I think that's kind of boils down to a little bit of, I think, what Simon was kind of alluding to a little bit in my mind was, can you make someone change ready? I mean, should we be 50% of your time is changing the organization and 50% of your time is running the organization, and therefore we need to resource more people if there's more running to be done, so to speak, or more change to be done, so to speak, because then they would be change ready, wouldn't they? They're the kind of people who can change it and run it. Do you see what I mean? Or if we keep it separate, because it needs different structures, different governance, different things to change the organisation, then if change is happening so much and at a quicker pace, aren't we going to come to that place where we're still putting change on those running the organisation, or we're just getting rid of them and they're falling behind, which isn't really a good people outcome, is it?
But then I think, I guess it depends as well as to whether you're talking about small change, medium change, big change. I mean, I guess what I was alluding to would, because of the nature of what we get involved in, tend to be the large change, big operational or organisational changes. Whereas, I think maybe what we'll see is that as change becomes more a part of the everyday, the need for those massive transformation programs may well start to reduce, because, some of our clients, particularly some of the smaller startups, they're building change into the way they design their business from day one. They're agile in terms of their operational structures and systems and solutions from day one. So actually, when it comes to having to change something, it's not everyone going, oh my God, we've got this huge legacy that we've got to then deal with. Actually, it's agile in its very nature because of the way they've structured it. And I think, that's the best of all worlds, really, because then you don't have this legacy piece of people that you've got to worry about. You've designed your organisation in that way. I mean, Tim, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you've obviously built your own organisation from scratch. I imagine that's the sort of model that you're working to, right?
Yeah, we're very California. We're so street.
It's pretty hard.
I'm very convincing, Tim.
Says this 49-year-old middle-class white guy. But yeah, no, look, we do. And every single employee that comes across my bow, I brief them and I say, look, you'll be with us a short time or a long time. We are changing. What we will do is we will put everything into you that you put into us and more. And when you fly the nest, we will help you to find another role. And that might not be forever. We don't do forever around here. And so it's getting that company culture right. And people come on board and they really appreciate that, because there's no BS.
Yeah.
So, but it's such an interesting. So I've been really thinking about that question, sort of that we've come from. There is the question of where does leadership lie, and permissioning of individual members of staff. Because actually, Ian, you said, you asked that question about that 50-50 thing, and I'm just going, I'm not sure that that's the right question. Individuals within an organization, if you've got the culture and everything else right, which of course is quite halcyon and something to aspire to, and not every organization has got that capacity to do it. But, every single individual, it is their responsibility to improve their workplace and their environment around them. So it isn't just about just saying, a top-down approach is the only way. Yes, we do need to make strategic decisions, but even better, if directors were really about just listening to the troops and listening to the strategic ideas that come out and then filter them and then feed them back in and let them happen, that's a much stronger model, in my opinion.
Okay. Simon, I mean, we've gone round.
Yeah, well, it's funny actually what you said then, Tim, because you were literally saying word to word what Branson is looking for in his leadership. When he set up his leadership program, there was 3 things that he wanted his leaders to be able to praise instead of criticise, love all people at all levels of the organisation, and to be great listeners, so they listen to employees' ideas and act on them, implement them. And just another couple of quotes. Remember, he says you train people well enough so they can leave, but you treat them well enough so they don't want to. Absolutely. Yeah, and clients don't come first, employees come first. If you take care of your employees, they'll take care of the clients. And it's very sort of simple thinking. The organisation has a culture that people associate it with being a people culture. So, whether it's probably not for everybody, and not 100% of the people who work there have got positive things to say about it. But compared to a lot of other organisations, you seem to be heading in the right direction, I feel, and has been for a number of years, is my perception.
And it's interesting that, isn't it? Because you mentioned kind of Amazon and Google earlier, and I suggested this is the way they're working, but I've never worked for them. And at the end of the day, a lot of that could be branding, in the sense of the type of organisations. And you always hear these stories, don't you, about disgruntled employees, or what really happens in some of these bigger modern organisations, if you want, that have grown fast and stuff. And yeah, I think if you kind of get hung up on everything, it's all hearsay, really, isn't it? But at the end of the day, I think the challenges around getting people to take on change themselves, and getting other people to lead people through change in the right way, are things that have got to be, I would have thought part of building a change-ready organisation. So that kind of those 2 things, helping people change, or leading people through change, and guiding people through change, or some accountability individually that change happens, and therefore need to help it happen in the right way.
But no, I think probably we should close off this part of the topic. But Simon, any closing thoughts, just to kind of round that off from yourself?
I think that the language we use in the organisation is really important. So when Ian was talking then, and it triggered something in me. So we don't talk to people about change. We talk to people about being part of the future. And that to me is a much more enticing proposition. Right, change has got connotations of difficulty and all the rest of it. But if we say being part of the future, that leaves it open, and it leaves it to the things that Ian was talking about, coaching and helping people get there. So if we ask the question to people, what do you need to help us get there? Turning it around and giving it to the employees, finding out what makes them tick, but actually the value proposition that you're asking them to consider is to be part of the future and play a role in it. It's different language. Maybe a bit pink and fluffy, but I think, worth considering.
Oh, I don't think it's fluffy at all. The brain cannot, if you can paint a rich picture of that future, our brains cannot tell the difference between what it sees and reality. There's no separation in terms of neuro processing. So it's really interesting that that if you can paint that picture really, really vividly in the future, people will naturally migrate to it because it will become their reality.
Okay. So thank you, Simon. That was a good topic. I mean, we went everywhere with that, didn't we? that's good. So Sarah, I think you're next in the round robin. So what's going on in your world? What are you thinking of?
So it's a much smaller topic. It's a much narrower topic than the one that we've just chewed through.
That's all right.
So, but it's fine. We've had the opener, we've had the aperitif. So let's just go to a nice quiet glass of wine now, I think. Would be good. So I was just thinking about what we've seen with the clients and the programs that we've been supporting. And one of the things that I think is quite interesting, one of the topics that always comes up when we're negotiating with suppliers who are going to help companies deliver these change programs is the whole on-site, off-site thing, and expenses of people, a raft of people being on site for endless workshops and all the rest of it can get quite expensive in the grand scheme of things on a big project. And then, of course, COVID hit, and all of a sudden people couldn't come on site and do these things. And all of a sudden, every supplier was telling you how it was fine, actually. They didn't need to be on site and everything could be done remotely, which is fine, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. But I do think I think in some cases that's been a good thing. And I definitely think the whole remote working, the one thing that COVID probably has delivered in a positive way is it's demonstrated to people what some of us have known forever, which is that remote working does work. But I just wonder if for some of these larger programs, I personally do miss seeing clients. I miss being on site with my clients. We're still not there. We're still not actually going back to visit people. And I think with some of these change in a change environment in particular, that discussion we've just had about taking people with you on the journey, winning hearts and minds, all of that good stuff. Personally, because I'm a bit of a people person, I find doing that remotely quite hard. And so I just wonder if, it's a positive from a commercial perspective because companies are saving all that cost of people traveling and being on site. But I just wonder if there's something that's getting lost in terms of that people interaction, face-to-face training and all of that good stuff. And we're still not there yet. And it's just, to me, it feels like we're still quite a long way away from that. So yeah, just interested in people's experiences and thoughts around it.
Yeah, I think my experience, Sarah, is fairly recently. It was where, in the height of COVID, well, coming out of COVID of last year, where we kind of engaged with a partner fully remotely. And which is fine, it kind of worked in that way. But it kind of wasn't until we had organised a kind of site visit with the various different project team members that things started to shift gears. So it wasn't like we weren't moving forward. It wasn't like what you said, it's harder. And I think just getting there, meeting people face to face, having a beer and some lunch with them at lunchtime and just talking, even stuff not even project related, like you're a human being, yeah. This is Chris and this is what he does. And, oh God, I didn't realize you were interested in those hobbies and all those kind of things, those kind of natural conversations. Because the next day when we went back and started working remotely again, you can actually have just different avenues of conversation. You're just getting to know these people a bit better. So I think remote working can absolutely work. And I don't think I'd like to see let's go back into, fully visiting client sites all the time, constantly, and having partners, sit in offices for days on end. As a contractor and consultant myself, I like to think I can deliver, most of what I can do remotely. But I see the importance of face-to-face and human engagement and touch points, because I think it can help just break some barriers down, especially when you've got a partner and a company and maybe external people like me. It's just harder for the teams to gel as much. That's my opinion and my experience, but I don't know if anyone else has got. Ian, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, my experience is that you can pretty much deliver most things remotely from the programs I'm working on. I'm working on some global programs and have been right the way through COVID and am now, and never met personally, physically. And in fact, up until a few weeks ago, I'd never met anybody in the company I now work for quite a number of months, ever face to face, and works all fine and felt that's all great. But I do think there is, and I don't think, and an element says there's things I'm finding actually work better remotely. So ironically, I've found that workshops work better remotely. Crazy, hey? Yeah. The types of workshops I'm doing, and I've the tools I'm now using to be able to deliver them remotely, I've found actually help the introverts get more engaged in it, kind of in a weird way. So I'm learning a lot of stuff about that, which I think is absolutely invaluable and wish I kind of knew this ages ago, kind of thing. But I also think, and I'm in a bit along the lines of what Jonathan said, I also think there's an element of there's an element of other things that can be lost if you don't meet people personally. So a good example is I'd like to meet the people who I'm going to do a workshop with for a meal, and then we all go home and do the workshop remotely.
Yeah.
And it sounds kind of odd, but I think it takes out the understandings and the kind of some of those kind of social interactions and things like that probably do need to happen, and I do think help. The other thing, and this is going to sound a bit weird, a lot of work when I've done in big companies, you have a scheduled event with someone, like a meeting or a one-to-one or a workshop or whatever it might be. But there's little corridor chats, and I'm not saying they're suspicious and wrong. There's little corridor chats. It's not political, but the little corridor chats that happen that help you lead and steer. How do you get those going without it being formal? In the sense of, I'm going to have a one-to-one with this person. You come out of a meeting and you want to just kind of, you might, your head still, you might be going, and you might think, well, how can I help that individual? And you can't, because they've gone into another meeting, because all these schedules are now, and you can't just have that little walk out of that meeting, quick chat with someone about, well, I'll do this, you do that, blah, 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 kind of thing. So I miss those types of things is what I miss. And I think is it a miss? It's probably, there's a lot of oiling the machine that I might do to get transformations done that I don't do these days. Now, is it missed? Time will tell.
Is instant messaging the new corridor chat?
Or like Slack and WhatsApp or whatever.
Yeah,
it's a good point. I'd certainly use it in that way. That's exactly what
I could not do business with America without WhatsApp.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, because
aren't we thinking about this slightly differently? So it's rather than thinking about it as hit or miss, but it's just different. I envisaged during COVID that we would end up in a very differently structured society in the future. I don't know whether it will come to pass or not, but getting support, that workplace support would be disseminated now. So not necessarily from your family, but certainly in light of the new sort of attitudes towards travel, that we would end up being living and working for different companies, but in the same workspace. And so you would get your mentorship from somebody in a different company, but in a perhaps an office environment or combined working space that's in your village rather than in somebody's offices. And that we'll just have a different structure that forms as a consequence of COVID, travel, and all the other pressures that are on us.
Even becoming carbon neutral, right? So how can we travel less? How can we be more sustainable? Which is obviously it's a hot topic, and it continues to be, and will no doubt raise in its urgency levels if the data and everything is there. So it's an interesting thought, Tim. I've not really considered it in that way.
So did people think that the new normal is sliding? So everybody sort of predicted that we would be a much more sort of a much more sort of humble people coming out of COVID. We would have learnt our lesson. We would this, that, and the other. We'd be looking out for our neighbours more, etc., etc. And I think more and more as the media and normal life returns back to what it perhaps was, when social media grabs hold and our attention is diverted away from the scenario that we previously found ourselves in, I just feel that things would just get back to what they were, albeit we'll have a couple of more injections per year, but I just feel that things will slide back quite easily to what they were, and people will forget. It's just small little things like in the gym that I use, you're supposed to wipe down the equipment. It's happening less and less. In the supermarkets I go around, people are wearing masks less and less. And I just think the erosion of what was once considered, a cardinal sin if you didn't do those things is just the way people are. They slide back to their norm a little bit, or what's comfortable.
I think, but I think the issue for me is, and if we're not careful, we're going to end up in a whole COVID debate here.
We are.
But I think what's interesting is from a if you think about the question that I kind of posed in the beginning, is it does have an impact, and I suppose what I was alluding to was the fact that there has been a change in the environment around us, which has meant that the way that we do business has changed. And specifically in terms of those change programs, well, to your point, Simon, what I don't see is what people are not doing is all going, right, well, let's all rush back into the office. And that's been very well documented in terms of, people don't necessarily want to spend 5 days a week in the office anymore. And there are lots of benefits to that, the people getting a work-life balance, as you said, JP, a more sustainable environment, etc. However, I think still happening is that there is still a change at a high level. So, today on the news, they were talking about Austria and the fact that unless you're double jabbed now, you are being restricted in terms of what you can do. Now, this is not a debate about whether you have the jab or don't have the jab, but the point is that there are still restrictions out there. So if you choose to follow what you need to do, then the freedom is there and is coming back. But for the people who choose not to do that, and again, last week I heard on the news they were talking about 100,000 NHS staff who are not even first jabbed yet. And they're worried that if they force them to be double jabbed, then they will lose a massive amount of NHS staff, because these people are probably not jabbed because they don't want to be jabbed. They've made a choice. And so I think, what's interesting here is that, when I was doing business studies a very long time ago, we all did these steep analysis where we all talked about the environment, and everyone was a bit like, oh God, don't have to fill in that box because what's that mean? Whereas, these days, everyone can understand the internal environment of an organisation much better. Yeah. But these days, I think it's really been brought home. And I think I just see there are impacts of what's happened that will not change back. Things have changed for the good, and they won't go backwards. And I think in some aspects it's a good thing, because it's forced people to be more efficient. It has forced people to consider whether they do need, the amount of companies who have closed offices and consolidated people into one place, or because they just don't need that infrastructure anymore, because it's been demonstrated that people can work remotely and can work differently. I'm really interested, Tim, in your perspective around, I think this is what we need some different thinking around, it's almost like we need to start thinking, not just is it this or that, is it remote or in the office? It's kind of, well, what does this mean? It's really changed everything. And we can all think creatively about how we deliver what we used to do, but in a very different way. And it's not binary. It's not one thing or the other. It's, that it is potentially this opportunity to really think differently about how we create our communities and what that means. So
I think the whole working in the office, working outside the office thing proves that not one size fits all. So we're all individuals. We all have different personalities, introverts, extroverts, however we want to group it. And maybe for those who are struggling with remote working, organisations find a solution and help for them. Those that actually prefer it and are productive like that, and it's not impacting other employees who want to socialise or want to work in the same place, they continue. And as long as it's monitored and managed with a degree of sort of like respect of choice and about people's personalities and who they are, then it'll even itself out. Some will be in, some will be out. There'll be a hybrid thing going on, and it'll kind of figure itself out, and that becomes the new normal.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I hope it doesn't change. I don't think it will in my business. Like, I think what it has done is open the market up for people like me, and it's given me access to, companies not only nationally but even internationally if the demand is out there, which I was restricted to the southwest of the UK because I've got family, I've got young kids, I can't travel too far, stay over all week and come back like some of the consultants and contractors do, and I didn't want to be honest. I didn't want to be doing that. So now, having kind of opened the market up, I just think it's a hell of a lot better. And I think from an organisation's point of view is that they're seeing there's a lot more choice out there because they've changed they seem to appear to have changed their mantra of, we need to have a contractor in the office because I want to see them, the whites of their eyes, at 9 o'clock on Monday at that desk. And I think the whole IR35, I'm not going to go there, but the whole IR35 thing, it has kind of helped with that as well, because it's like, we don't want to work in that way. We're suppliers. We're not, employees and all that kind of stuff. So no, I just find the whole thing really interesting, and just the whole paradigm shift for me has just been fantastic. Obviously, we had the period of 4 whatever months of not working, but I think coming out the other end, those, like you say, habits have started to settle in. So that's just my opinion. But Tim.
Well, I mean, so during that lockdown period, I discovered in a big way Upwork. And as a result of Upwork and working with other platforms as well, I'm delighted to say that we employed our first Kenyan about 4 weeks ago, which has just been absolutely fantastic for us. Sort of stamps our authority on that, walking the walk and believing what we want from diversity and international approach to business, a global approach to business. But it's a very interesting it's very interesting change in perspective of how we work now.
Yeah, 100%. Sarah, anything else to add?
No, I mean, I think on the whole, I see it as a very positive thing. I think what's the quote that jumped into my head? Necessity is the mother of invention. It's I think it has made people think about things differently. It has forced people to accept the fact that there are other ways of working. And I think all of the points that people have raised about, particularly Simon, that the thing that everyone's individual, I think is lovely. The fact that people who work differently, think differently, prefer a different environment, they're all now able to work on a much more level playing field. And to your point, Ian, doing these workshops remotely plays into the hands of people who are more introverted. I guess the problem is it perhaps doesn't help those of us who are more extroverted, because actually we prefer being in a room with other people, and I love a flip chart and a pen. So, but yeah, I think I think it is what it is, right? It is the world we live in, and I don't think the change has stopped. To the point we made right at the beginning, this is just one element of what's changing around us, and people responding to that. And I think it's the nature of our lives now, not just our work lives, but it's the nature of all of our lives, that everything is constantly changing, and we're just having to start to react to that a bit more. So yeah, interesting discussion.
Ian.
The only thing I'd add, and I don't want to kind of debate it too much, is that for new people coming into work, apprentices, young people, working remotely, it can be a big challenge, because they're not seeing how other people are doing things, because they're only seeing the things they're seeing in the meetings they're seeing and things like that. So I think that could offer a lot of challenges. I'm not saying that we shouldn't learn all how to work remotely from the get-go. I'm just saying that I think there's some other things about bringing new people into the workplace and certainly young people who are trying to learn a trade or a craft, if you want, there might be some challenges there as well.
I think those problems have always been there. They've just shifted.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's different. It's time for some other personality types to struggle.
Yeah.
Share the love.
Well, just to finish that last point, it's not that I'm unloving. It's just that the human condition doesn't change. And, some people are, the home workplace might suit the introvert a bit more than the extrovert.
Yeah.
Which is probably a fair change, isn't it?
Yeah. I see what you mean. See where you're coming from. Let's shift it around. Give some other people a chance to shine.
Yeah.
Why not? Yeah, why not? Great. No, thanks, Sarah. That was good, actually. It was a good kind of topic, and it's just useful to see what everyone's kind of perceptions and thoughts are around that. I mean, whenever you bring COVID in the mix of a conversation, it's always guaranteed to get some thoughts on that. So that's cool. So I think we move to Tim. With whatever topic that you've dreamt up for us. I am waiting in bated breath to see what you've got. So what do you want to chat with us about? What's on your mind?
So some interesting statistics for you. 10% of Scottish companies have made any change for sustainability. Only 50% think it's relevant. Okay. So, what's happening in transformation now is that all organizations are potentially under new legislation that is being talked about right now for ESG regulation. We are going to have to go through some of the most difficult, challenging, unbelievably technical transformations within organizations generally, not just in terms of IT, but just in terms of how we do things every day. We've responded to that at our company by creating a sustainability game called Go Green. So that's why you haven't heard from me for the last few months, because we're just launching a brand new game that addresses those issues. But most organizations, from a sort of leadership point of view, are looking at sustainability as a complete pain in the arse, a lot of cost, very little upside. Yet those organizations that have already engaged in sustainable practices are performing about 10 to 15% better than non-sustainable organizations. But as part of the research that I did for this Go Green game, I looked into what's involved, and it's hell. And half of it you don't know how to measure. So the impact on carbon in your supply chain by land management, just really difficult topic, very complicated, and I think the conclusion I came to when sort of developing the game is actually it's a zero-sum game trying to lead that transformation. Forget it. Just get your staff to do it. And that's ultimately why we developed the game, is because it just switches the staff on to start doing it for you straight away. And we can all achieve these 45% savings by 2030 quite easily, actually, if you just switch the staff on. But the change in environmental governance and legislation that is coming down the road for all of us over the next few years is deeply concerning. I don't want to be the harbinger of doom, but it's pretty hellish.
Wow. Anyone got any thoughts?
My thoughts are that I can come back to Simon's question: how do we get more change ready? And coming back to what Tim just said there, if one of the answers is let your employees do it, i.e. they've got the capability to do this, then again, they're going to be doing the change, aren't they? So if they're change ready, this transformation that needs to happen for sustainability, we're going to have to do it.
Yeah. Like I say, it's legislation literally coming. If Tim is the true harbinger of the bad news or good news, and if you want to look at it in that way, because we should be bloody doing it. Companies should be taking responsibility. And you're right. I think there are organisations out there that are going to see there's a right pain in the arse, just as they did GDPR and data privacy and all these other things. Like, oh, God, isn't that what a pain in the arse to get all that? No, it's probably the right thing to do. We shouldn't be just selling data off to people. We shouldn't be doing these things that we've been doing for hundreds and hundreds of years. Maybe not the data, but you know what I mean? I'm all for it. I think again, how do you keep something simple and easy to adopt Whereas your statement there, Tim, I've already forgotten it and not committed that to memory. Of the example that you gave, like, do I need a degree in calculus to kind of work all this stuff out? I mean, yeah, how is it accessible?
I think the thing that I find interesting about these things is, to your point, JP, GDPR was the first thing that's shot to my mind. Yeah. And I think a lot of what went on with GDPR has been good. But what you end up with is, because they have to produce a framework that covers everything, there are elements of it that just end up creating work for the sake of it. And it isn't relevant for some cases, but it ends up being relevant, or people feel that they have to cover it off because they want to make sure that they've not been found wanting if there's an audit or a check or whatever. And it sounds like, to your point, Tim, this is probably what's happened here, is the fact that organisations have not stepped up and decided to do it because it's the right thing to do, which people don't generally if there's a cost associated with it, because people are commercial. But so now what's happened is we've ended up with a situation where somebody's had to create something that covers all aspects of every single possibility, and therefore it becomes complicated and complex because you're trying to cover something, that fits everything for everybody. And I think, these things invariably add cost into the supply chain, but actually probably for the right reasons. And unfortunately, if people stood up and did the right thing, they could be flexible. Then they could do it in the right way for their own organisation. But because they don't, this is why regulation comes along and sits over the top. And I'm not saying it's necessarily the right approach, but the government have got to do something, because otherwise we're all going to be doomed, as Tim said. And it's true, it really is true. There is no other option now but to do something and try and comply. There's bound to be a whole bunch of consultants spring up now on this stuff, yeah. Right? There'll be a whole bunch of people making money out of becoming great consultants in this area. So the sooner anyone can read all that stuff and digest it and come up with a solution, that's where they'll be.
Productize it.
Yeah, exactly. That'll happen.
So there are already analysts making a lot of money out of it, because you can actually. I was attending a lecture on this last week with an environmental consultancy arm of a larger firm, just talking about the quality of the data that you can buy in, because you can buy in all the data you need to demonstrate that you are auditing and trying to make savings in your scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. But actually, will that supplier show you how they generated that data? Well, no, that's proprietary, isn't it? But it could just be somebody making it up. So yeah. The quality of that data. But going back to GDPR, I think that's a really interesting one, because I really love every single website I go to being told to whether or not I should accept cookies, and about 3 clicks later, which really adds to the productivity of the world. I always thought the non-reversibility of USB sticks was a big problem for productivity. I actually calculated that 10 million man hours are wasted globally switching a USB stick round 50% of the time.
Well, it's not though, is it? Because you do it 3 times. You try it one way, it doesn't work. You turn it, doesn't work. It turns back again, and it works.
You can see what I do for fun.
Coming into GDPR, I just don't understand why we don't have a GDPR training passport, because every company I go to, I now have to sit through another GDPR training course, which makes me understand all the things I already understood from the last one I did. But I just want a passport, so when I go in, I've passed that training course.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff like that, like anti-money laundering if you're in the finance industry and all the rest of it. That's the same. And you just, so, and maybe that will come because people are becoming more, portable around organisations and, that type of thing. But maybe there's an opportunity there, Ian. You just need to. I think so. I think it's just a badge on LinkedIn that says you've done it, and LinkedIn hold the kind of control of that, and there you go. They can make some money out of it. It's a bit like Cyber Essentials or something, isn't it? Like that. You just go to a third party and get your badge, and then you stick it on your, it's almost like that. You need to go to some third party and get your anti-money laundering training or your GDPR training, and then you can stick your badge on your.
So GDPR ready? Is that?
Yeah, something like that.
Or GDPR inside? Is that?
Look, don't let this recording go out to public. We've just made $1 million.
Yeah, cut all that out.
Bottle that idea. Bottle it. Bottle it.
Yeah, bottle it.
No, I'm going to go to time.
But Ian, with that face, they still wouldn't believe you.
Go on, Simon. You wanted to say something.
It was just really about the environmental thing and companies and what's really driving them. For a lot, it's a competitive advantage, and is it because consumers were wanting more, I don't know, provenance or what have you with the products and the services that they're consuming. But there was certainly a section there in the marketplace that was demanding that, and therefore there was a response to it. And the first organisations that sort of created products and services that satisfied that at a premium even were stealing a march on their competitors, and then it was creeping more and more into the way that they marketed themselves, even if it was like, a tagline at the bottom of an advert, or we plant a tree forever, whatever it is, And then it was just seen to sort of really creep into the general parlance out there and became a thing that people attach. It just became a thing. And I'm just very cynical when it comes to that, whether the right drivers are behind it, or whether it is demand and supply.
The BBC seems to want it, Simon. That says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then the media jump on it and it goes crazy, and then the government responds to that to be popular. I mean, if it wasn't for the Green Party a few years ago, sort of pushing the green agenda, the Conservatives would have kicked it into long grass a long time ago, if they could find any in the concrete jungle. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm just very cynical about these things, but nobody can argue that it's not happening for the right reasons, and the world needs to move in that direction. You've just got to tell those folks who are around the climate change table to just sign up, because what other option have we got?
What I'm interested in, Tim, is your kind of statement earlier around, I can't remember what percentage of the companies, but people who are doing this stuff, companies that are doing stuff, are more successful. Why do we think that is? Is it because consumers naturally are gravitating towards companies that are basically more sustainable? They give a crap about the environment versus the other ones who, trying to reap everything, all the resources from the world and do what they can. They're like, what is it, do you think?
Well, you can read the reports. It's Harvard and Oxford universities. I can send them to you if you want them. But But look, it's human. So it's not all our businesses are, you can take two plumbing businesses, but which ostensibly do the same stuff, but they're different because they've got different people employed. So the whole thing is human. So organizations attract better talent, retain better talent, retain people for longer. People are more motivated, which all that Dan Pink evidence supports, which is, our motivations are, beyond, once you get beyond Maslow's hierarchy of need for food and shelter and security, it's all ephemeral stuff like motivation and drive and reason, purpose, and the reason to turn up for work. So all of that adds into that. But then also the clients that they're attracting, and people are attracted to greener things these days, or certainly that's what we've been telling the millennials to think for the last 20 years, and they've heard it. And so that's what drives them. Sorry, I say millennials. I say young, the youth of today.
Younger than us, right?
That's most of the population, isn't it, JP?
It gets larger every year.
Yeah.
Really irritating, that, isn't it?
Yeah, so true. No, that's interesting. Yeah, I thought it would be related to those kinds of things. It's just, like why again, the why, isn't it? Why should we do it? Apart from the obvious, the bleeding obvious, which is we've got one planet and we should look after it. But, but apart from that, why should we do it? Do you know what I mean?
No reason, really.
No. Yeah, crazy.
I love that expression. I can't remember who said it, but there's no planet B.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm using that. There's no planet B.
Well, it depends which way you look. But yeah, I mean, some people seem to suggest that Mars might be planet B.
That's right.
Terraform the bugger first, though, haven't we?
I was going to say, it doesn't look that inviting, does it?
I I'm now holding up my Spock sign.
Yeah, live long and prosper. Cool. Have we reached a natural close here?
Let's hope so.
We've gone full circle all around the place. We've talked about lots of things, and let's draw it to a chat. I think I can hear the last orders bell starting to ring. So no, I just want to say massive thank you to yourself, Tim, Simon, and Sarah for giving up your evening and just recording with us and having a good old natter and a chat and putting the wheels to rights. Really, really appreciate it, and and supporting us and everything that you're doing. So thank you.
Not at all.
Welcome.
It was interesting. An interesting debate.
Yeah.
You've got quite a diverse group here, haven't we?
Yeah, we knew that though.
Yeah, it's good. That's the whole idea, though, isn't it? Really.
Yeah.
If you want to record a question for next time, just record that question, send it to hosts@beerandbutterfly.co.uk, because we love to get people's voices on this podcast, right, Ian?
Yeah, no, that's great. Sounds good.
Great. All right, see you next time. It's last orders at the bar, so thank you for listening to the Beer and Butterfly. As always, we want to encourage participation.
You can get more details of the episodes on our website, which is www.beerandbutterfly.co.uk. That's www.beerandbutterfly.co.uk.
You can get in touch with the show by emailing us on hosts@beerandbutterfly.co.uk. Send us your questions, written or recorded, or come and join us at the table as a guest.
Also, check out our LinkedIn page, Beer and Butterfly Podcast, and on Twitter @butterfly_beer, where you can engage with the show directly and get involved.
Yeah, and we look forward to seeing you at the table next time.